What's up, YouTube fam? Back again for another video. Today we're going to be putting some handles on some knife blanks. I'll run you through the process, give you a quick workshop tour. It's organised chaos, to be honest, but I really need to have a clear out and make some space and like bolt down my grinder properly and a load of other things that I need to do. But we'll get there. So I'll turn the camera around, give you a quick tour of the utter fucking shambles that is my workshop. Right, it's a nice day outside. Anyway, workshop tour. Got various belts fucking lying about everywhere. Indicator stocks make a good belt hanger, I must say. This is my grinder, made it myself. This is an attachment I use for sharpening. This pulls back and there's a bar that comes out and then you can angle it off the platen. This is my new platen. I've probably ground out maybe 10 knives in this one, and I've got a new side plate made as well with a radial adjustment on it. That's clever, I just dropped everything. Down here, got my small wheel attachment arm. It usually sits there, and I've got a 200mm contact wheel in rubber. It's actually more useful than you might think. I would maybe consider buying another one, and maybe a different size, obviously. This is my new work rest that I got made. As you can see, it's got holes for lightning, and it's to replace this one because when I was grinding, that's my bucket. When I was grinding, I was like running out of room on the left hand side with bigger knives, so I was like falling off the edge. So that puppy there, it comes out about another 6 inches or something. Same on this side, so I'm never going to run out of room in it now. So here's my, I'll do the workshop tour first. That's my controller for my belt grinder. It needs to be hung on the wall. Pillar drill, old but gold. Got a load of drill bits over there. Most of my stuff I keep inside. That concludes the workshop tour. Let's get on to making some handles. Right, for a kick off, we're going to use some liners in these. I'll just get the ones that I'm actually going to use off the floor. That would help. Right, this is the handles we're using today. We have a selection. I'm doing 4 because that's as many clamps as I've got. I've got enough clamps to put 4 handles on at a time. Here's the knives that they're going on to. So what I do first off is I'll trace around the knife, make sure it's in a fit. Now these had you can see there's a chip in the corner there, so you don't want that anywhere that's going to be on the knife, do you? So I'll put it down in this corner here, or this corner here, can't remember, one of them anyway. So what I'll do is I'll do this first, and then when I put it in the drill press, know where to put the knife, and then drill the various holes. But first off, we'll split these in 2 with the grinder. As you can see, I've marked them out really roughly. I'll show you in this white one, be easier. So that's the length we need, obviously. This bit here is spare, so I'll be able to use that for like segmented scales in the future. And these 2 lines, I'm just going to cut down the middle between the 2 lines because the 2 liners aren't quite as wide as the scales, but we'll have 2 factory edges on it. So I shall cut these and then we'll come back and I'll put this in the drill press and we'll start drilling and reaming the holes. There's got a lanyard in this one, so it's got a carbon tube for the lanyard and a couple of carbon pins. I'm just going to concentrate on the white handled knife for the sake of this video, because it'll just confuse matters otherwise. I've got the other ones to do as well, but I'll just concentrate on the white one because it's easiest to see as well, you know, where the holes are and whatnot. So I'll split these and then we'll resume at the pillar drill, the drill of pillars over there. It's a Meddings drill. It's an old drill, weighs an absolute ton, and it's about 10 million times better than any of the modern crap you get. It was flimsy as shit. So get yourself some old machinery. There's plenty of life left in them. Here we are at the drill press. As you can see, I've got the scales squared up at the front to each other, and they're in a vise which is tight. Make sure it stays level, because sometimes these vices, because they're not that expensive, they can like move. So you need to make sure that this is level. Stick a level on it if you need to. And then what I simply do is put the knife on top, like so, and then I'll drill the first hole, which is this one at the front. I always start at the front, don't know why, but I just do. I'll drill this 3mm hole right the way through, and as you can see, I've overhung it so that the hole isn't going to hit the vise when it gets through that scales material. After I've done that, this hole here I'll line up in the centre of the vise, because there's a cut out in the centre beneath it, and I'll put a pin, a carbon pin, in this one to hold it in place before I drill this second 3mm hole. I've got my drill in the chuck, it's tightened as well. Make sure you tighten it up, tighten it in both. Like once you're tightening it up, tighten like one hole, then turn it, tighten the other hole. It's just good practice. Once I've got these two holes drilled and pinned, that means it pins straight through both. I'll then do the lanyard hole, which is this one at the back, and it's I think it's a 10mm hole. Let me just check. 10mm drill. 10mm drill into a 10mm hole. Yes, it's 10mm. So that's the drill we need for that. So I'll just keep that out with the others. I've also got a 6mm drill, because there's some 6mm holes on some of these knives that I need to drill. So that's the next part. Drill the hole, stick the pin in, drill the other hole, stick another pin in, and drill your back hole. When you're drilling as well, don't be like cranking down in the drill to get it through as quickly as possible. Go slow, because if you don't, you'll blow out the bottom end of this when you break. Here you can see I've drilled the two 3mm holes and put pins in them. And now I wait to drill the 10mm hole at the back. Couple of bits of advice: chain your chuck key to the drill, and that way you won't spend half the time looking to see where you put your chuck key. And I just drilled a hole in the end and stuck a keyring on it. Also, keep your drill as close to the burnt material as you can, because it'll save it deflecting. Okay, and invest in some reams. Guy in Edgy, Scott, advised me of this, because I was having a bit of difficulty before with some pins, and it really does make a difference. It's only like a fraction of a millimetre larger than the hole, but it makes all the difference for fitting the pins into it. Okay, so I'm going to wait to drill this, and then we'll be ready to drill the liners. I do them separately, don't ask me why, just do. Okay, that's the scales and the liners drilled. As you can see, pins are going through them all nicely, so that means they'll fit. So I'll stick that one over there, that one's done, and then I'll get on to the rest of these, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what else you need to do to this before you stick it onto the knife. Okay, another small tip: when you're drilling stuff, always make sure you clear your vise out after every set that you've done, because it just takes a little bit of this plastic stuff here to tilt your knife this way, and then you'll have trouble lining the pins up when you glue it together. Okay, now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the scales so that they're on the inside. Let's just get them into the picture here. Right, here's the scales. Okay, the lines are outside, so I'll turn them into the inside face here, and I'll trace out the knife pattern on it again. And then what I do is I use a drill bit with a blunt, like a shallow angle on the end. I've got a couple here, can't remember which one it is I use. That one I think it is, because it's got a blunter angle, right? And what I'll do is, inside the line of where the knife is, I'll just drill some wee divots into the back of it. Don't go too far. I'll show you it once I've done it, obviously, and it just helps the glue, the epoxy, gives it somewhere to set. And I also use this thing here, countersink. I use the countersink in the insides as well for all the holes. And again, it just gives the epoxy somewhere to get into the handle so that it can take a better hold. I've also drilled the handles, as you can see. It's that one there we're talking about. And that's just to help the epoxy go from one side of the handle to the other. It gives it a better hold. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to scribe out the perimeter of the knife on here, and then I'll do the business with the countersink and the big drill. Okay, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so that's the divots drilled. You can see I've not gone in too far, maybe about 3mm, something like that, 2-3mm at the most. And I've also countersunk these pinholes for a bit of extra traction for the epoxy. So that's that one, ready to go pretty much. So I always write the inside and the outside because obviously there's different patterns on each. You want the best pattern you can get, so that pattern on the outside there looks a lot nicer than the pattern on the inside, so that's why it's like that. And I always mark the inside so that when it comes to gluing I don't make a balls of it. Now what we do next is we get the knife. Where have I put the knife? There it is. Okay. Put the handles on the top of the knife. It's the wrong one. Put the handles on top of the knife like so. Put the pins through, and what I'll do is I'll arc the front of this because I don't want it to just be a handle with a straight end. I want it to have an arc on it. So I use my patent arc marker, which is top of a lid off of something, and what I'll do is I'll just stick that on there and draw the outline of where the arc needs to be. I don't like it coming from the bottom of here, and you also need to make sure that it's not going to go past the line where your bevel starts, which I've indented there. Yeah, because if it does, you're going to have a bit of a job sharpening your blade later on, and it just looks better when it's not, I think. I mean, the top can be pretty much in line with the bevel, but you don't want it any further this way. Well, I don't, so I'll put a curve on this. Then what I'll do is I'll take it over to the grinder there, and I'll grind the excess material off, and then I'll put a chamfer and angle on the front of the handles. I'll show you how we do that. I'll just mark these up just now, okay? So you can see I've marked the arc in the front there, and I've just checked it with a knife. There's plenty of room. That's the edge of the bevel there. What I'll do is I'll tidy up this end. I'll just trim this end off with the grinder, and then I'll use this part here. I'll get the pins holding the two blocks together, which means it'll be the same in both sides, and I'll just curve out that curve and trim off this liner. Okay, I use an old belt for this, a worn sort of 80 grit or something along that lines. It usually does the trick. You don't want to use a new belt because what it'll do is it'll leave marks where you grind it with the paper being fresh and sharp. You know, you want something that's slightly blunted. I'll show you when it's done. So there we have the curve ground in. The excess is gone. You don't want to use your belt grinder too quick, too fast a speed in this, or what it'll do is it'll burn the liners. As you can see, I've used it quite slowly and the liners are intact. Now what I'll do is I'll put an angle on the end of this here, and what I use for that is a piece of wood that I have cut at 45 degrees, like so. And I put that on the work rest like that. Then I'll mark these where they need to go to with a pair of verniers so that they're both exactly the same. And then I stick it on the grinder like so and like turn it round. You need to look down from the top, see where you're going with it. And I'll turn it down almost to the line that I'm going to mark. And when you're almost at the line, just stop. And then we'll put on a higher grip belt to make it nice and smooth. Then we'll also hand sand it before we glue it and polish it on the polishing wheel, because these parts you can't really get to them once they're epoxied onto the knife. Okay, so that's where we're at just now. I'm just going to put a 45 on these, mark them up and put a 45 on these, okay? Then I'll come back. Now we have the chamfer on the end. As you can see, it's equal on both sides. Right the way along there. So what I'll do now is, this will just need a quick tickle with a hand sander, and then we'll polish it up. That's quite a smooth surface because I used the old belt. Don't know if you can see it in the light there or not, if it'll pick up. Probably not, because it's white. It'll be flipping adjusting the camera out of range. So that's where we're at. Now we're all ready to get the liners scratched up for the epoxy, and the blade, we'll give it a quick scribe with the carbon scribe to get some extra purchase on it. Then we can glue it together. I'll come back and we'll show you that in a second, okay? Hopefully this is making sense. This block here is a bit on the high side really. I could probably cut it down to a bit where my thumb is, because it just ends up using the top part of the platen here. But I know there's no, like, the platen's bolted with countersunk bolts round about here somewhere. So I don't want to be grinding over that bit, because obviously, even though the bolt's fairly flush, it's not exactly flush, so you might get a little dumped as you go around it. Okay, so I'll get the rest of these handles done, marked up and what have you, and then we'll commence the gluing and the epoxying. We're back inside now and we're ready to glue these handles up. As you can see, they're ready to rock. These ones have been chamfered on the outside and polished. Divots on the inside. I've just got to scratch up these G10 liners, then we'll fit them. Another thing I like to do before I do that though is the carbon pins are slightly, I don't have a 10mm ream, so the carbon pins are slightly tight. So what I'll do here is I'll stick them in my drill like this and just use a bit of sandpaper. Turn the drill on and hold the paper like that, and you'll take a little bit off the outside diameter, enough for them to slide in. You don't want it too tight. Well, you want it tight, obviously, but you don't want it so tight that you're going to have to hammer the bloody thing in. You'll end up breaking your carbon tube. So I've been through it a few times, additional times with the 10mm drill, to see if I could get it big enough, but it's not going. It's like I say, it will fit, but it's pretty tight. Okay, so I'm going to give it a spin in the drill, and just take you also need to, it also helps, you need to key these pins up so that the adhesive sticks to them. They're all carbon fibre pins I'm using. That's my big ones in that jar, small ones in that jar. I've got some brass 3mm as well. I just use 3 and 6mm, makes life easy, and I've got the tubes in the 6mm pin jar, shall we say. So I'll put these brass pins away. We're not using brass pins and anything today. We're just going carbon fibre. Carbon crazy, shall we say. There's none of these would suit a carbon brass. Maybe the white one would suit a brass pin, but it's getting carbon fibre because all the rest are. What I'll do next is I'll get some greaseproof paper, and I'll basically cover this green mat with the greaseproof paper, get myself some isopropyl, some blue roll, a pair of rubber gloves, and I use kebab sticks that I chop down to mix the adhesive with. And obviously the adhesive, I'll get that all together and we'll start gluing them. Okay, what I'll do is I'll scribe all these liners first, and then we'll start gluing. I'm not going to show you that. All I will say is that when you're scribing them, I use a carbide scribe. This thing here, if I can just find it. It's a carbide scribe, and I'll just cross hatch it within the lines of where the knife is. You can see I've outlined the knife on this. Maybe you can't see it very well, but I have. No, I haven't. God, I'm slacking. I'll outline the knife on these liners, and then I'll use the carbide pen to just scratch it all up so that it's nice and rough. You also need to put it on a flat plate with sandpaper so that you're sanding off all these burrs around the holes. Yeah, and because you need this to be perfectly flat on all sides. Same with the scales, you need them to be perfectly flat on all sides. I sanded these on the plate earlier, so I know that the scales are flat. I didn't do these though, but I will do. What I'll do is I'll scratch it all up first, and then I'll just put it on the plate, give it a quick figure of 8 on the plate, and that'll take off any other bits and pieces. And also when you scratch it, there'll be some bits and pieces, a little rags of G10, so you get rid of that as well, but you still leave the indentation for the adhesive to stick to. So I'll go and do that, and then we'll come back and do some gluing once I'm set up for that. But yeah, this is my setup. It's not a professional workshop by any stretch. This is my kitchen table, believe it or not. And like I say, it does the job, and I've got plenty of clamps in there. That's the clamps I use. A lot of people say they're crap, but they seem okay. They seem to be working okay for me. They've got a decent bit of strength in them. And I've also got some silver ones that are. These aren't as good, to be honest, because if you look at the ends, it's just got a little bit of contact on it. So they're not as good. The black ones are better. So I'll get this all set up, and then we'll come back and we'll start gluing. Another thing I do is when I tape the blades up, I tape them up past where the scales are coming to for a start off. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll put the scales on top of it like this, and then what I do is I get a Stanley knife, perching, and or an X-Acto knife, and I'll just cut around the edge fairly tight to the scales and the liner. I don't just do the liner because that might move, And that way, when you come to epoxying it, you won't get any epoxy in your blade. I'll sometimes leave it just maybe a half a millimeter or something past it. Like when I'm when the scales are on it like that, I'll angle my knife slightly so that I'm just past the end of the scales. And that way, when you come to clean it up with a cotton bud and isopropyl or acetone, whatever you decide to use, you know that you're not putting the scales on top of tape, and your blade won't get covered in epoxy. You need to take once you've glued it all together, you need to take this cotton bud around the front of the scales. In case I forget to mention that later, you put some acetone in the end of the cotton bud, and then you wipe it clean. But before you put these scales anywhere on it, you need to finish the bevels. These need to be to a finished state, the front shape here. And because like I say, once they're on the knife, they're next to impossible to sand or polish or adjust, shall we say, without damaging the blade. So it's best getting it done first, and that way you don't have to worry about this part at all when you're shaping the rest of the handles. Okay, so that's the knife's all epoxied and clamped, stuck together. And what we do now is just leave it for 24 hours. Once it's set properly, leave it for 2 days actually, if you like. I usually leave mine for a couple of days. These two I did yesterday, so That's at 24 hours. I'll probably start profiling them tomorrow. And the reason for the outline of the knife on here is so that when I'm taking the material off, I know where to stop, before I start hitting metal. Although it'll soon become obvious when you start hitting metal. So that's how the handles go on. Like I say, I'll leave these to set for a couple of days, and then I'll start shaping them, profiling them. And what I'll do there is, let me just show you. You can see where I've scribed the outline of that one. Take all that excess off for a start, so that you get the profile around the outside done, and then I'll start shaping it from there on. But I'll possibly put a video up for that if there's any interest. If there's no interest, I won't bother. So that concludes the video on fixing knife handles to blanks. Alright, thanks for following. Appreciate you putting a like down the bottom and subscribing if you haven't already. And we'll be back with more knife hijinks in future. Cheers, bye. Peace out.